Hey, welcome to part 2 of the CPCU 555 video series. Today we are covering the most difficult aspect of the CPCU 555 exam and breaking down why this exam is so difficult. And this video is presented by AssociatePI. I'm Jake. We are an independent organization not affiliated with the CPCU or the institutes. I passed my CPCU 555 exam and I'm here to help you pass yours. So let's get into it. As I mentioned, this is video number 2. If you want to see the other videos of the 555 video series, go to AssociatePI.com/videos. All right, so the pass rate of the 555 exam for this most recent testing window was 79%, meaning out of everybody that attempted the exam, 79% of them passed, which is actually a lot higher than usual. Historically, this is typically one of the harder exams. I've usually seen the pass rate more commonly around about 73%, 72% around there. So this is the highest I've seen it in a while. It's currently 79%, which ranks it as the third highest pass rate of all CPCU exams. But don't take this exam lightly. This is actually one of the most difficult exams. In my opinion, it's definitely one of the hardest. It gave me a lot of trouble. There's just a ton of content, and it's one of the intermediate exams. It's not a beginner exam. It is definitely one of the more complex exams that you will take. So although the pass rate is high, don't take it lightly because this exam is tough and a lot of people fail this one. All right, so why is the 555 exam so difficult? The reason I found it to be the hardest exam and why a lot of people fail this exam is because there's so much content to memorize. There's a ton that you have to know for this exam. In fact, there's 11 different types of personal insurance products, meaning products such as the homeowner's insurance product, the auto insurance product, the umbrella product, watercraft, etc. Each of those has their unique coverages, exclusions, and conditions that you have to memorize. So, for example, the homeowner's policy, there's coverage A, B, C, D, E, and F. You got to know all of those. You have to know who's covered by each of those individual coverages. Know what are the exclusions for each coverage. Know what are the conditions for each coverage. So there's a ton that you have to know for each personal insurance product. And on top of that, there's 80 endorsements that you have to be familiar with. You don't have to necessarily memorize them all, but you have to at least know all of them. So that's a ton of endorsements, and these are endorsements to, again, the homeowner's policy, auto policy, watercraft, mobile home, bunch of endorsements that you have to be familiar with because they're going to be on the exam. So just a ton of content. And in addition, this exam is going to test you on the minor details of each endorsement, which is very tough. So not only do you have to know the endorsement, but you have to know what is covered by the endorsement, what are the exclusions of the endorsement, what are the little minor conditions of the endorsement. So just a lot of content that you have to know. And the most difficult part, as I kind of just touched on, is the 80 endorsements that you have to know. You have to memorize them all, or come close to memorizing them all, be familiar with them to the point where you can see it on the exam and recognize what it is and know what it covers. So you have to know, 1, what is the endorsement? 2, what policy does it apply to? So is it an endorsement for the homeowner's product, an endorsement for the auto product? And then 3, you have to know the minor details. So there's going to be little exclusions. You have to know what the purpose of the endorsement is, what's covered and not covered by the endorsement, why a consumer would use the endorsement. You have to know all those minor details for every single one of these 80 endorsements. So focus on memorizing those endorsements. They're tough, but you have to know them. That is the most difficult part. So as I said, 80 plus endorsements. It's just a ton to memorize. We personally went through and counted them all. There is definitely over 80. So every single question is going to be based on some type of coverage, endorsement, personal insurance product. It's just a lot to know for this exam. So here's our plan of action for how to approach the 555, because it's a ton of content. So you really want to put this plan into action to study and prepare. So first, we recommend that you have to read each chapter individually. Treat each chapter like its own textbook. Read it, and after you complete reading the chapter, go back and jot down every endorsement and coverage from the chapter. So first, read the entire chapter, then make note of every endorsement and coverage. So, for example, for the homeowner's chapter, go back through, write down every single coverage, so coverage A, B, C, D, etc. write down what's covered by each coverage, who's covered, what exclusions, conditions, write all of that down. Then go back and write the endorsements. So write down every endorsement for the homeowner's policy, which there's a ton of them. So it's going to be a little annoying to write down every single endorsement and definition, but you have to know them. Step 3, go back and write down the minor details about each endorsement and coverage. That's all going to be on the exam. And lastly, step 4, or not lastly, but step 4, compare each endorsement and coverage to one another. So study the differences between each, because the exam will try to trick you. It'll take a couple endorsements, put them in the answer options, and it'll kind of mix and mingle the definitions and terms so that you have to be able to distinguish one endorsement from another. And lastly, once you've taken all these notes, you've read all the chapters, taken notes on the coverages and endorsements, you will have your master study guide with all the coverages and endorsements on one sheet of paper, or probably multiple sheets of paper because there's so many. So go back through, study them all, look at all the endorsements, and make sure you have each memorized and that you are familiar with each product, each coverage, and each endorsement. And to reiterate that, here's our 3 tips to passing. Biggest tips to passing the 555 exam. Fully read the course. You can't pass this exam without reading the full course. Number 2, as I just mentioned, create a study guide. Write down all those endorsements, coverages, exclusions, conditions. Write down everything. Clearly don't rewrite the entire textbook, but take your shorthand notes. Write the quick definitions, the minor details that you have to know, and make a little cheat sheet for yourself to review back to, so that instead of going and rereading the entire course, you can go to your study guide and review that while you study. Lastly, practice as much as possible. These exam questions are very difficult. They're very tricky. They are written to try and trick you. So practice with the real exam questions. I recommend you practice with at least 300 questions. Take at least 300 practice questions, format it like the actual exam before you take the real exam. So those are the 3 tips to passing the 555. And that wraps it up for video number 2 of our 555 video series. I highly recommend you go download our free practice exam for some practice before you take this exam. You can get that over to AssociatePI.com/practice exam. And with that, we also give you a big guide, big study guide with every endorsement and coverage listed that you need to know. So I highly recommend you download that study guide so you can take notes on those important coverages and endorsements. And if you want more resources, go over to AssociatePI.com/555. You can get all these blogs detailing more about the difficulty, exam questions, and endorsements. And that wraps up video number 2. In our next video, we're going to cover the definitions and format of the 555 exam. So the definitions including the endorsements that you need to know and coverages. And that's it. We'll see you on the next video.